Hello everybody, welcome to Huff Goes to the Movies. My name is Eric Huffman II. Most people call me Huff. Some people know I love going to the movies. And Thor Love and Thunder hits theaters on July 8th, so I figured that now is the best time to take a look back and explore the journey of Thor throughout the MCU. In my previous video, I talked about the first Thor film from 2011, and now of course it is time to come to everyone's favorite Marvel movie, Thor: The Dark World. I remember going to see this in 2013 when it first came out, and at that point, because of the success of the first Avengers movie, I think that there were a lot of questions of what was going to happen next, specifically with Thor. Loki was the villain in the first Avengers movie, and at the end of that film, we see Thor taking him back to Asgard. And this film picks up exactly at that moment. We see the trial of Loki, we see him being sent to prison on Asgard. But the film itself is not really about that. In this film, the Dark Elves, the ancient foes of Asgard, are reawoken after Dr. Jane Foster finds an ancient artifact that's been hidden on Earth. And Thor, who has not seen Jane since the events of the first film, he must now go back to Earth and not only figure out what's going on with Jane, but he has to figure out a way to combat the Dark Elves so that they do not attempt to take over the entire universe. And on paper, I think this sounds like the type of story that is ideal for Thor. The first film is set largely like a Shakespearean drama, but we do get a lot of Asgard. This film, a new director has taken over, Alan Taylor, and I feel like his main cinematic influence for this film was probably The Lord of the Rings. We get extended flashback scenes of the history of Asgard, the battle with the Dark Elves. There is a MacGuffin, there is an evil warlord who is trying to be reunited with an ancient object. And so it feels like Lord of the Rings was really sort of where Alan Taylor wanted this film to try and vibe. But I think a lot of people might agree that this is maybe the worst of the Marvel movies. In part because this is a film that had a very troubled production. So, outside of the fact that the script has a few too many hands involved in it, Christopher Yost wrote one part of the script, Marcus and McFeely, who would go on to write Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, they have a part in the script, and Joss Whedon actually did rewrites on the film to make it lighter and more comedic. And these different beats hit and miss throughout the film, and you can really feel like there are too many people trying to steer this thing in one direction. Outside of that, apparently the film went under more than a month worth of reshoots after its initial production was finished. And so you can really feel this film being pulled in a few different directions. There is the story of Thor learning to accept his place on Asgard and him trying to take control of the Nine Realms and trying to establish order. There are still those bits of the first film that feel like an awkward romantic comedy when he is teamed up with Jane, and the chemistry between him and Natalie Portman still doesn't really work. And then there is the component with the villains of the film, the Dark Elves, who don't have much characterization, they don't have much personality, you don't really learn much about them, and so they become instantly forgettable. And so while this film had the makings of trying to be a superior sequel and trying to really deepen the mythology of Thor and trying to really elevate him and trying to really expand on that side of things, this film has way too many people involved. There are too many visions clashing with each other. And I think that while this film has some really interesting looking set pieces, each world that we visit has its own distinct feel and aesthetic. It's got some of the best cinematography of any of the Marvel films. I would say that this film becomes forgettable because there's not enough in either direction to really latch onto. You don't care about Thor and Jane. You don't care about the Dark Elves. And when things are not really about the conflict between Thor and Loki, they just don't feel like they have a lot of weight to them. Although, interestingly enough, this film does really introduce us to the concept of the Infinity Stones It doesn't give us the full history of them like in Guardians of the Galaxy, but this film does start to tease some of the interconnected narrative that would define the first 3 phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And on that hand, I suppose there's something to appreciate here. But overall, it's not really a great watch. It's not really the most memorable watch. And if you're someone who has not seen Thor: The Dark World, you might be better served watching like a recap of it or an Easter egg breakdown of it before fully committing to the 2 hours of this film. So guys, that's all I have to say for Thor: The Dark World. My next video will be a review of Thor Ragnarok because, of course, Thor Love and Thunder is coming out later this week. If you have not already, please do subscribe to the channel. Be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on Thor: The Dark World and any other films that I may want to revisit from the MCU. Once again, my name is Eric Huffman II. Most people call me Huff. Stay sweaty, my friends. I'll see you at the movies.